This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Monday, December 12, 2005, and this is episode number 35 of Walt Disney World Today. I'm Matt Hochberg from MGMstudios.org. Our panel today includes trip planning guru Mike Scopa of MousePlanet.com. Welcome, Mike.
Good evening, Matt.
That's a pretty boring intro, Mike.
I know. Well, it's just a lousy, wintry day. So.
Okay. And we've also got Len Testa of TouringPlans.com. Welcome, Len.
Howdy-ho, Matt.
And our special guest today is Lonnie Toshima, a columnist over at MousePlanet.com who writes practical travel advice. Welcome, Lonnie.
Hi, thanks.
And today we're going to be talking about running in a Walt Disney World Marathon, the half marathon at Walt Disney World. This year is being held January 7th at 6 a.m., and the full marathon is the day later on January 8th at, is it 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., Mike?
6 a.m.
6 a.m. Okay.
Both of them are at 6 a.m. One is, last year they had, well, we'll get into that, but last year we had both of them beginning at the same day, and this year it's 2 separate days.
Okay. Now, Lonnie, since you're the resident marathon expert, what are some differences between, say, a Walt Disney World Marathon and a regular marathon?
And a regular marathon?
Yes.
Well, for one thing, the Walt Disney World Marathon is the only marathon in the world that allows you to run a marathon through the theme parks of Walt Disney World. So for a lot of people, it's not just doing a regular marathon, but they combine that with a big vacation and they bring their whole family over. So in that sense, it's considered one of the most family-friendly marathon events around.
Okay, so are there a lot of, you say family-friendly, can you expect to see, say, children walking along in the marathon, or is it mostly semi-dedicated runners?
Well, it is a certified marathon, and so they do take that portion seriously, but they do have a lot of activities having to do with the whole weekend of the marathon. For example, they have a kids' little fun run sprint event they have for the really young kids. They also have a little 5K fun walk, fun run that they have for people that might not want to train for a full marathon, but they want to just kind of get involved in the spirit of things. So they do have a lot of activities for everybody. Okay,
so for people like me, I'd have to enter myself in the under 6 category, I think, to be able to compete. And Lonnie, why don't you tell us a little bit about the course? You mentioned it goes through the parks. Can you give us some specifics on where it goes?
Well, it kind of depends on whether you're doing the full marathon or the half marathon. If you do the full marathon, it does go through all 4 theme parks. Whereas if you do the half marathon, it's basically going to take you from Epcot to Magic Kingdom and back. With the full marathon, you, in addition to that, can go to Animal Kingdom and MGM Studios as well. One of the other things is that the Disney World Marathon is held entirely on private property in Walt Disney World itself. So they can manage all of their own road closures and traffic coning and all that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of stretches in between where you're just running down the regular roads of Walt Disney World, but there are those places where you get to walk right through the parks, and I think that's what people really like a lot.
And what are some preparation tips that you would give to people who are new to the Walt Disney World Marathon?
Well, I'm hoping by this time they've already been doing all their training because it's not even a month away. But as far as kind of last-minute preparations for people that have already registered and have been training, because it's family-friendly and there's lots of people in family members and friends that show up and want to cheer people on, one of the things that I mentioned in the recent column was, you want to make sure that you have your name written across the front of your shirt. So that it's very easy for people to see what your name is. You might want to get your family members to write big signs with your name on it so that when you're running, it's easy to find them. So there are some things like that you might not normally consider for a regular marathon that I think might make things a little more fun and exciting when you do the Disney World Marathon.
Okay, and now you're running the marathon, rather, is being held in January. How does the weather factor in? I mean, how warm or cold are we looking at for a 6 a.m. start?
Oh my goodness, it really depends on it. Year by year, it changes completely. Although, because the event starts at 6 in the morning, it does start in the dark. And if anyone's been to Disney World in January, you know that it can get kind of chilly. And you probably want to bring something to keep yourself warm at the start, a sweatshirt. I've worn gloves. As the sun comes up, things start to warm up, and it's nice. But in the meantime, you probably want to have something extra with you. Pay attention to the weather reports. If they expect it to be very cold or very hot, they do try to let the participants know when they go to pick up their running numbers at the Marathon Expo.
Last year I was expecting, I mean, all week the temperatures were in the 40s, and then come race morning it was, what, like 65? It was just crazy.
I think that was last year. It got really warm, but a couple of years ago it was the other way around. It was, I don't think it was quite freezing, but it was well into maybe the low 40s or high 30s, and you don't necessarily expect that in Florida.
In
so
January.
A lot of people are wearing garbage bags to, get a little bit of extra insulation and all kinds of things. So, yeah, the main thing is to kind of keep a close eye on what the weather might be and make sure to pack for layers. One thing that's really nice that Disney does is if you cast aside your warm clothing, like your sweatshirts, on the side of the road as you're running, the volunteers do come and pick all of those up, they wash everything, and they donate them to local charities. And so you can just bring your raggedy old sweatshirts and things and plan to cast those aside, and they won't get left on the side of the road.
Oh, wow. I would definitely have gone and brought 10 layers and just thrown it off.
Wardrobe.
Yeah, right.
Hotchkiss thinking about something.
Yeah, I can see Len bringing his one of his many Van Halen sweatshirts and just
exactly the ones with the ones with the white shirt and the black sleeves.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lonnie, I was just going to ask Lonnie, how many times have you done the marathon in Walt Disney World?
Well, I've done the full marathon once, and I think I've done the half marathon twice. So altogether, I've gone back 3 years in a row. And I do that because I really think it's a fun event. It kind of gives me an excuse to go to Walt Disney World, for one thing, because I live in California. And, yeah, I could just do a regular Disney World vacation, but it's always nice to be able to kind of tie that into something special. And for me, that's been the marathon event. And it's nice because I know some people that go to it, and it provides me with a social environment where I can meet with people. So it kind of gets to be this really nice trip for me. So I'll probably end up, I'll continue doing it. So I'm planning on going in January. I'll probably end up going the year after as well.
Where are you staying, Lonnie?
I'm sorry?
Where are you staying? Where are you staying when you're in Disney
Where
World?
am I staying? I actually have some friends that live maybe about 20 minutes away from the resort. So we're going the cheap way. We're going to do it that way, rent a car, and put her around. Part of our problem was that I was one of those procrastinators and managed not to make reservations for a hotel room until late. And by the time I got around to it, it was easier just to stay with some friends.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think with the marathon weekend becoming more and more popular, I would encourage people to start making their reservations earlier. It used to be, just a few years ago, if you made your reservations in October, you would have been fine to get a regular room. And that was not the case this time. So one of the things I would recommend for people in the future, if they want to do this, is to make sure to make their reservations early on.
Lonnie, I have a question for the millions of our listeners who will be taking part in the half and the full marathon. What kind of advice can you give them in terms of on the morning of the race? Should they make use of the buses? Should they drive to the start? What kind of recommendations would you give them?
Well, as long as you're staying on property, I really do recommend that you use the official Disney transportation. They do such a good job. And, they want you there at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be half asleep anyway. You might as well let someone else do the driving for you. The monorails are running. They have tons of shuttle buses. These are not the regular buses that transport you from your resort to the parks. These are special ones that they bring in. I talked to a bus driver last year. They had buses that they had rented all the way down from places like Chicago. So they have tons and tons of buses that pick everybody up from all of the Walt Disney World resorts and get them to where they need to be on time. So they really do a terrific job.
And Lonnie, you said you've ran in a couple of 3 different separate races. Have you seen any differences over the years?
Well, I think one of the things that Disney probably realized too, and that's probably why they finally separated out the full and half marathons into separate days, is that it is getting to be a very popular event, and every year more and more people register for it. And I think it got to be so large this past January that they were having some logistical issues. And so I think that might have been one of the reasons that they decided to separate it out over 2 days. But it's a huge event. It's very festive. It's a very festive atmosphere. All the characters come out and greet the runners and things. But I think that's probably the main difference that I've noticed, is that it has been growing every year.
Lonnie, last year we had the big controversy with the sweep, with runners not maintaining the pace of, I think is it 16-minute pace that they need to maintain?
Right.
What can you? Has there been anything that you've come across this year that would make a difference this year as compared to last year? I know that last year they mentioned the pace, but it seems to be much more upfront as to letting the runners know that if they don't maintain a certain pace, they will be swept. My question is, will they have any leeway in that? What I mean is that, let's say someone has gone 8 miles and they've maintained the pace, but on the last checkpoint they're behind by about 30 seconds. Do you have any idea if they'll let that go by, or do you think they'll just say, "Oh, sorry, on the bus"?
Boy, that's a really good question, and I think that's the $64,000 question for a lot of the slower walkers. I think, for the most part, at least with the half marathon, I think Disney has done a good job of trying to minimize that problem by actually changing the course and the way that the route goes.
Yeah.
For the half marathon, it's no longer the same as what it was with the full marathon. And the big issue that they had this past January was with people who could not make it in time to get into the Magic Kingdom before they had to open Magic Kingdom to the public. This time, people are going to go through the Magic Kingdom far earlier on in the course, and so that particular problem hopefully will not happen in the future. And so with that not happening, it's possible that they won't feel quite as pressured. So it's possible that they may not be quite so strict on sweeping people that aren't very good, that aren't being able to keep up with the required pace.
Yeah. At the official pace, I think everyone should be through the Magic Kingdom by like 7:35, 7:36. If you're maintaining 16-minute miles. Because mile 6 is just outside of Splash Mountain.
Yeah, basically the main difference was that with the previous course, the entrance to the Magic Kingdom was around mile 10.
Yeah.
And they've flipped that around, and so I'm really hoping that it won't be the same problem again.
Okay, see you down there.
Remember, Raglan Road, Saturday night.
Mike, I don't think you're going to have any problems keeping the pace anyway, so...
Oh, I think I just have to worry about keeping the pace with Mr. Testa. That's what I need to worry about.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, well, that's it for us today. I'd like to thank, again, Lonnie for being on the show. Lonnie Tashima's column can be found at mouseplanet.com. We'll have a link in the show notes. Thanks for being again on the show, Lonnie.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
And this has been episode number 35 for Walt Disney World Today. Be sure to visit the Walt Disney World Today website at www.wdwtoday.com for the show notes. And, of course, you can always email us. Just simply send us an email at questions@wdwtoday.com. As always, you can look for our new shows on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays of every week. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, and Mike Newell, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.